As somebody who served multiple decades in prison, one thing I can say is you face a lot of resistance when you're trying to change the system. It's something I had to think about from the earliest stages of my journey. I always knew that I hated being in prison and I hated the policies that, that resulted in America confining more people per capita than any other nation. That is a bad policy. But it's also very difficult to get people to see why it's a bad policy. So I knew that if I wanted to change the way people perceived America's criminal justice system, I would need to build a coalition. And I certainly hope that you will become a part of that coalition. And one of the reasons I make this video is to help you understand the reasons behind the different books that I wrote, including Success After Prison, which I'm going to be talking about in this particular video. Because when people see all of the books that we offer at Prison Professors, they'll say, why are there so many books? Well, those books, they all serve a purpose of getting the end result, which is to change America's prison system, to introduce the types of policy changes and law changes that we advocate to change, including federal work release programs, more incentives that will allow people to work toward earning freedom, more opportunities for people to develop themselves so that when they get out of prison, they emerge with their dignity intact and with opportunities to prosper. I am not one who believes that just getting people out of prison is enough. If you get people out of prison and they don't have the skill set or the support network or the mindset to become successful, that those changes can really hurt the movement. And I've seen that many times during the multiple decades that I served in prison, is that people would get out of prison despite those people not having any pathway to a better life, because the prison system doesn't condition them to do so. Right? In other videos I've written about how America's prison system is very much modeled on the system of communism, where we take away private property, where all the power goes to the state and the government, where you block individuals from incentivizing excellence and pursuing excellence. Instead, you measure justice only through how many calendar pages turns, rather than an individual's efforts to contribute or reconcile or atone or make amends or prepare for success. I would argue that every American citizen would be better off if the people who got out of prison left with their dignity intact and with opportunities to go on and reach their highest potential. As one of my mentors, Norval Morris, used to say, that high potential could be for some people a janitor, could be for other people a brain surgeon. If a person can develop skills and competence, a person should be able to rise to his highest potential, and society benefits with policies that would deliver that kind of outcome. But when I was in prison, those kinds of messages were not very well received. In fact, staff members and many people who believed in the prison system would argue, why should we incentivize people who broke the law to do something that they are supposed to be doing? It's the wrong mindset, in my view. And I don't claim to have a crystal ball or to be not all knowledgeable, but what I will say is if we were to focus on the result that we wanted, we would choose a different system. If the result that we wanted was to create a system that when people finished serving their sentences and returned to society, they were able to support themselves and build a life as in the full fabric of America, achieving whatever it is they want to achieve, that would lessen the really unacceptable recidivism rates. That would block intergenerational cycles of recidivism. And so that's the kind of policy change that the Prison Professors works to change. And Success After Prison is one of the tools that we developed along those lines. Now, if you look through our book page, you will see Earning Freedom, Conquering a 45-Year Prison Sentence. And I wrote that book really to give the big picture of big change. And then the follow-up book is Prison, My 8,344th Day, which helps people understand how do you stay strong even while going through a single day in confinement? Because every day matters. Every day you make decisions that come with opportunity costs. And so I wanted to really share what I learned from leaders. And then this book, Success After Prison, we wrote and published because we knew it would be important to communicate and give hope to people who were serving sentences. I'll always remember the day that I got married while I was in prison. And sometimes people will say, well, how did that happen? How did you get married while you were in prison? For me, it was engineered, right? I walked into prison knowing, well, not knowing anything, because it took me a year. I spent the first year of my time in solitary confinement. And after I was convicted and a judge sentenced me to 45 years, I went to a high security penitentiary. By the time I got to a high security penitentiary, everything was different for me because I had already read Socrates and Nelson Mandela and Viktor Frankl and so many others. And they had helped me to see that I couldn't change the past, but if I made good decisions, I might be able to influence the future. But because I served that first year in solitary confinement, I could be really grateful when I got to the yard of a high security penitentiary. And there were 40-foot walls all around me. So I could see the horizon only up to the wall. I couldn't see the other side of the wall, but I could look up and you could see the sky. And when you could see the sky, you had hope. You could see blue and you could remember and you could breathe the air. And all of that gave me something to be grateful for while I was living in prison and still today, because I know what it's like to have liberty taken from you. But I also know that many of the people with whom I served time didn't have that same experience. They didn't read Socrates. They didn't get a different mindset from reading Frederick Douglass. So I wanted to give them hope, but I'll always remember some of the questions I used to get because I was very deliberate and intentional about my adjustment strategy in prison. First working toward getting an undergraduate degree, then working toward getting a master's degree. And other people in prison would ask me, said, why do you care so much about getting an education when you're serving a 45-year sentence? Well, the reason for me was abundantly clear. I believed that if I worked and earned credentials, more opportunities would open. And I wanted to continue opening more opportunities. And that certainly happened throughout the journey. Because I got those academic credentials, I developed relationships with professors in universities. And many of those professors were authors. And because I connected with authors, I got an opportunity to publish first with them and then publish my own books. And by publishing, more people became aware of my work. And by the time I was in my 15th or 16th year, many people were reading about me. And by then, the internet had started. So people were also researching who is Michael Santos. And one student discovered that I graduated from Shorecrest High School in Seattle in 1982. And they were coordinating a 20-year reunion that would take place in 2002. And in 2001, one of these students reached out to the organizing committee of that high school reunion and said, is this the same high school where Michael Santos went to school? And the person on the other end of that communication was Carol. Now, I'd known Carol since the 5th or 6th grade, but she was a good girl, not the kind of girl that would really hang out with a guy like me, who was very fast and driven and making a lot of bad decisions during those reckless adolescent years. But she was now coordinating the 20-year reunion. And she said, yes, this is the same school. Why are you asking? And the student who wrote the letter said, well, I'm a student. I'm reading works of his, and he's in prison. And that prompted Carol to write me a letter. And when I got the letter from Carol, I was so thrilled, because when you're in prison, I was already in prison for 15 or 16 years. And when I get this letter, I could notice a woman's handwriting. And I remember showing it to my friend because I was so excited to get a letter. I was always thrilled to get a letter from a woman. And Carol wrote me and said, you knew me from then. I'm coordinating the 20-year reunion. And, I don't think drugs are good for society, and you shouldn't have done that, And it was like a challenge, because she was, telling me that the words were, you're in prison, you shouldn't have broken the law. Well, that prompted me to write to her, and that led, yes, you're right, I made a lot of bad decisions, but I'm no longer this 20-year-old kid. I'm 35 or however old I was. And it led to a correspondence and of her visiting me. And we actually fell in love inside of a federal prison's visiting room. And it's really quite extraordinary to find the love of your life while you're serving a 45-year prison sentence. But all of this, to me, was engineered. That's what success after prison is. It's not luck. It is hard work. It is overcoming struggle and obstacles. It is becoming the best in the world at whatever it is you're doing and developing confidence along the way. And Carol married me on June 24th, 2003. It's now been more than 22 years since we've been married. And the craziest thing is I love her more today than I ever did, because we're building our life together, and it's an unconventional life, but it is a life determined to show others and make an impact on the lives of others, helping them realize they can succeed after prison if they follow the same path that leaders taught me. And I needed to give them hope. So success after prison is really the start of that hope. In fact, when Carol picked me up out of, I was at the federal prison in Atwater, California, and she was driving me across the bay to San Francisco, where I would serve my last year and a half house. And I remember telling her, I'm going to make my first $1 million within 5 years. And I remember her asking, well, how are you going to do that? You haven't even gotten to the half house yet. And I said, I'm going to follow the same path that got me through 26 years in prison, and I'm very confident it'll lead to financial success. And now it was those decisions that resulted in me doing millions of dollars in transactions, earning millions of dollars, and becoming a multi-millionaire. But it's that story that I take into prisons to help people realize you've got to invest in yourself. You have got to be the best in the world at what you want to do, and you can do it even if you're going through the crisis and the struggle of prison. So success after prison is actually the third component in the trilogy of earning freedom, which tells the whole story of my journey through prison. Prison, my 8,344th day, which tells an individual, what are the strategies to stay strong and powerful and deliberate while going through every day in prison? And success after prison, it was actually initially called Success After Prison. I think how I made my first $1 million within 2 years of getting out of prison was designed to give people hope, to show them the reason that I'm asking you to study. Because if you study, you will become successful. If you develop skills, you will become successful. If you develop a strong support network, you will become successful. If you develop self-discipline and you stop making excuses for what the system is doing to you and instead start focusing on what you can do, you will become successful. And so that trilogy was my hope of starting to build a movement in America's prison system to helping more people invest in themselves regardless of what the system is doing, and then finding ways to document and memorialize their progress and using their stories to then persuade Americans why we need to change the system, why we need reforms that will allow people to earn freedom through merit. That is the American way. We should incentivize a pursuit of excellence. We should show that regardless of what bad decisions you may have made in the past, you can always work toward becoming better. And if you do that, more opportunities will open for you. So Success After Prison is designed to accomplish that task. It is part of the trilogy that we use to teach and inspire people who might be living in solitary confinement as I was, who might be living without hope, who might be living feeling as if though they've been abandoned by society. Instead, we want to show them that they might be able to even find the love of their life while they're going through prison. They might be able to create meaningful income opportunities that will lead to them becoming a multi-millionaire even while they're in prison. But nothing is going to happen if they don't put forth the effort. And in Success After Prison, I try to show how people can do that. It is a foundational component of our work at Prison Professors Nonprofit. And we do hope that you will support our work by following us on social media and sharing our message wherever you get it, if you find somebody who's facing a challenge, make sure you share our work. I always make 3 promises. Number 1, I'm never going to lie to you. Number 2, I'm never going to ask you to do something I didn't do. And number 3, I'm never going to ask you to pay me a penny. I am Michael Santos, founder of Prison Professors, and I believe in you. Be cool.